All right, so let's get through the ones you guys have asked me for, and then we'll get to the extra concepts. So we'll start with number 9. Number 9 said, graph the inequality. R is less than 2.5. Who asked me for this? Okay, so you didn't have to solve anything. It just was practicing graphing. All right, so if I count by, here's my 0. If I count by 0.5s, which I think is a good idea. Here's my 2, here's my 3. So here's my 2.5. I have an open dot because it's not equal to, and then all my r's are smaller than the 2.5 because the smaller side of my inequality is facing the r's. Are you cool with that? Okay. Yeah. I want to know what you're counting by. So, Nick, if yours was this, and my guess is that most of you just counted by ones. So let's say here's my 0, here's my 1. If you counted by ones, I at least have to see a number somewhere. I need my 0, and then I need you to indicate that here is 2.5. So at the very least, I have to have 0 on there. If you're counting by ones, I don't need to see 1 like on either side, but I do need to see some sort of context as to where you are. Because this is a 2.5, I'd like to see either the 2 or the 3. You know what I mean? Just to kind of give me a location that I can compare it to, and then indicate that the 2.5 is somewhere in there. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay, so now we have 21. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Other than ones.
Yeah, other than ones. That's not like the order, like not the order of numbers, but like the like you said why, like if it's for numbers,
yeah.
Or you get off.
If your counting is off, you'll get like half a point off. You know what I mean? Like if you mix up, which is why I want you guys thinking about, if you're not counting by ones, tell me what you are counting by. So if you noticed here, I put a 0.5 right here for me to be like, okay, I'm counting by 0.5s. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I mean, it's not going to throw you completely off, but you'll get like a half a point off for just the wrong counting, but then everything else will be okay, as long as you do everything else okay. Okay. I like your question, so thank you. So 21 said, solve each inequality, graph, and check. All right, so for 21, I'm not going to have you checking, but I do feel like your skill of knowing how to check is really important on a test. So you can do a quick check. Everyone's saying up to their desks. Andrew, with your marking pen in your hand, paying attention to what I'm doing, even though you didn't ask for it. Who asked me for 21? Okay, so this says Q plus a positive 0.5 is greater than a negative 2. All right, so to get rid of this addition of a positive 0.5, I'm going to add a negative 0.5 to it. Remember, when you're adding or subtracting decimals, you need to make sure that you line up your decimal points. All right, so here my 0.5s cancel out, so I have Q is greater than, because I'm not multiplying or dividing by a negative number. Here I just need to add these two together because they are both negative, so Q is greater than a negative 2.5. Do you need me to graph it too? Did you see an absolute value sign on it? Then don't do an absolute value work. Pay attention to the problem that you're given. If this was absolute value, you would split it. But this is not an absolute value. This is just a basic inequality. So pay attention to whether you have absolute values or not. All right, let's take a look at 23. Who asked me for 23? Okay. So 23, I have a negative 3/5. This is a good one. Times n is greater than or equal to a negative 9. Again, this is not an absolute value. So Peter, what can since my coefficient is a fraction, what am I going to multiply my coefficient by to turn it into a 1? Yep, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. So what's its reciprocal? Yep, 5 over negative 3. Or negative 5 over 3. It doesn't really matter. So I have to do that onto both sides. All right? So I'm multiplying both sides by a negative 5/3. When I do that, my 5/3 and the coefficient and its reciprocal cancel each other out, so I have an n. On the other side, my negative 3 divides out, and the negative 9 becomes a positive 3. So now I have 3 times 5, which is 15. Since this coefficient was negative, and I had to multiply by a negative number, I need to flip the inequality symbol. Okay? Are you cool with that? Okay. Questions on that one? All right, let's take a look now at 32. Who asked me for 32? Okay, so let's take a look at 32. 32 said, I have 4k minus 1 is less or equal to negative 3. Is this the one you're talking about? Okay, everyone's looking at 32, please. What's the first thing I should do, all of you? What's the first thing I should do? Chris? Yep, I'm going to do it in the opposite. Then what? After that, what should I do? Chris? Excellent. And a positive 1 to both sides. So I end up with 4k is less than or equal to a negative 2. Now what, Chris? Excellent. Sweet. So my 4's cancel out. I get k. I get a negative 1/2 on the other side. Chris, do I flip my inequality here? Why not? I do agree, but why not? What was my coefficient? Yeah, this coefficient, this 4 that I had to divide everything by was positive, so this remains the same. Are you cool with that? Okay. It doesn't matter that that 2 is negative. It has to do with that coefficient. Okay. Let's go to 35. Who asked me for 35? Awesome. So 35 said, I have 3m is greater than 5m plus 12. All right, Jack, now this one's different because we have 2 variable terms. But the idea is still the same. I need to get my variable terms to one side and leave my constant on the other. So I'm going to add a negative 5m to both sides. So my variable terms get on this side, and my constant 12 is left by itself. Are you cool with that? Okay, so on the right, I end up with a 12. On the left, I end up with a negative 2m. Does that make sense to you? Okay, so now, Jack, I need to get rid of that multiplication by a negative 2m. What do I do? Excellent. So I end up with a positive 1m, and I end up with a negative 6. Do I need to flip this inequality symbol, Jack? Why? Sweet. Well, I'm dividing by a negative number. Yes. So that flips. Are you cool with that? Awesome. All right, let's jump to 40. Who asked me for 40? Chris? Yes? Okay. Trent sells electronic supplies. Each week he earns, so he earns, this is weekly, $190 plus 4% commission on all sales. All right, so let's remember what commission means. Our commission, this is when you're a salesperson. How many of you guys have parents who work in sales in some way, shape, or form? Okay, so if you're a salesperson, a realtor is a salesperson, right? If they work, a lot of people for sales, they attach your salary to how much you sell to make you want to sell more. And so you earn a percentage of however much you sell. So if you sold $100,000 worth of whatever product you get that you're selling, and you get, just for the sake of a number, you get 10% commission, That means 10% of how much you sold is what you can put in your pocket. So on $100,000, 10% of that is $10,000. So you just earned $10,000. All right, so it's a percentage of. All right, so what they want to know is, we want his weekly goal is no less than $500. So we want to know how much is his sales. Find amount in sales. All right, so if I look at this, my whole is going to be my total weekly pay. My parts, I'm just going to do this as a general game plan. It's the money in salary. The salary means that you get it no matter what. Most people are on salary. All right. We add to that the money in commission. So that's my general game plan. If you did not have that, you're writing that down. All right. It needs to be no less than that total, our goal in our weekly pay. So this is our goal. So this is the minimum we want to make because it's no less than that goal. All right, so what we're doing has to be greater than or equal to that goal. This is our actual. So our actual has to be greater than or equal to that minimum goal. All right, so let's write down how I do this. I have my money in salary plus that 4% times our sales amount. That is how you find commission. It's a percentage times that sales amount. So I end up with, well, I don't know my sales amount, there's my X. So I end up with 190 plus, well, 4% is 0.04 times X is greater than or equal to 500. Chris, does that help you? I kind of have to remind you guys how to find commission. We don't do it a lot. And then you can solve that from there. Okay, so that's 40. Chris, do you need me to solve that? Okay. Yes. It could be on the test, so understand commission. It's a percentage of the amount that you sell. Okay. 45. Who asked me for 45? Awesome. So 45 said that we have solved the inequality. I have -2 is less than or equal to d plus 1/2, which is less than 4 1/2. What kind of compound inequality is this? You have an and you have an or. What kind of compound inequality is this, Ashton? This is an and. We don't have to split it, it's already split. We just have to understand that's an and. So Chris, I need to add a -1/2 to everything. To all three sides. Well, -2 plus a -1/2 is a -2 1/2. Plus, nope, is less than or equal to d, which is less than or equal to, well, 4 1/2 minus a 1/2 is simply 4. Are you cool with that? Peter? Thank you. All right, let's take a look at 61. 61 had us doing just a plain old absolute value equation. So 6 minus b is equal to -1. So these, because they're equations, we just split them. Well, first of all, is it possible for me, whatever, now everyone's eyes are up here. If it's is it possible that whatever I put in for my b, that when I take the absolute value of this math, I'm going to get a -1? Nick, I need you listening. Is this possible? Whatever this math is inside this absolute value, after I do that math, and then I take the absolute value of whatever that number is, can I get a -1? Victoria? No, I can't. This is a no solution. Because the answer to an absolute value, not B, the answer to an absolute value cannot be -1. So there's nothing I can put in for that B where I will get a -1 once I take the absolute value. Okay, 63. Oh, did I already do 50? I did, right? No, I skipped 50. Let's jump back to 50. So it says, well, this is just writing a compound inequality. I'm not going to go over that only because I'm going to do a story problem for you guys. All right, so I'll do, that's just writing a solution. So I'll do that in a second. 63. Shh. Okay, this is an absolute value inequality story problem. So one of the things you guys asked me for, someone did, is an absolute value inequality story problem. This is it. It says we have an ideal diameter. The moment you see ideal diameter or ideal measurement, you know you have an absolute value, or you should. All right, the other thing we're looking for is a varies by, or it can be within, within either side of a measurement. So the ideal diameter is 2.8 centimeters. The actual can vary by, at most, 0.06 centimeters. We need to find the range of acceptable diameters. You will definitely have one of these on your test. So I would put a big fat star next to that problem. So if these give you trouble, you're going back and you're practicing these. Yes? This is 65. We're still going to do this. We'll do 63 in a second. So this is 65. All of you take a look at 65. You are definitely having one of these on your test. So I have the absolute value of your actual measure minus your ideal measure is less than or equal to the varies by amount. This is always the structure of that inequality. Always, that absolute value inequality. This is always a less than. It's always an and. Alright, so now I'm just going to substitute my values in. I don't know my actual. There's my x. That will always be your x. So I have the absolute value of x minus my ideal, which is 2.8, is less than or equal to 0.06. Somebody split this for me. It's an and, because it's less than. Somebody split this for me. Sam, split this for me. Sit up. Split this for me. What? I'm going to put a greater than in here? Nope. I'm not. I'm an and. I leave this exactly the same. Then I add another less than or equal to on the left side, and this becomes a negative 0.06. Do you understand? So you need to check, you need to fix that if you did not have that, Sam. This is a proper split for an and. You have exactly the same thing, but then you have another less than or equal to on the left, and then to the left of that, a negative whatever that constant is. Now I'm going to add 2.8 to all the sides. Remember, line up your decimals. So in the middle, I simply have an x. These are always less than or equal to, both of them. On the right, I have 2.86. On the left, I'm going to do this subtraction. You will not have a calculator. I put a 0 in there. That's a 7. So I have 2.74. And this is centimeters. This is what you will see on your test for sure, is one of these. All right, let's look at number 63 since I skipped it. 63 said I have 4 plus the absolute value of r plus 2 is equal to 7. Who asked me for this? Okay. So Serena, remember, whether this is an inequality or an equation, I still have to get that absolute value part completely alone. So I'm going to add a negative 4 to both sides. So I have the absolute value of r plus 2 is equal to 3. So this is the absolute value of r plus 2 is equal to a positive 3. This is possible. So now I just need to split this. So I have r plus 2 is equal to 3, or r plus 2 is equal to negative 3, and then you would solve that. Are you cool with that? Okay. So let's talk about an inequality story problem. This is what you guys asked me for, okay? So, at the end of your homework, please do this example with me. All right. This is an compound inequality story problem. All right. So the average of 3 reading scores on the accelerated reading tests must be between 8.8 and 9.9 for students to move to the next level. You're all doing this. So you all have your marking pen in your hand. You're all writing this down. Ashton, you're writing this down. All right. The first score was an 8.7. The second score was a 9.6. Find the range of the third test score. All right, there's no absolute value because there's not a varies by. All right, we have a minimum and a maximum of the average of 3 test scores, or the reading scores. All right, so we are given 2 of them. We have to find the third. Your game plan will always be the minimum for this, in this particular instance, score is less than or equal to the average score, the actual average, which is less than or equal to our maximum score. Now, I could give you the area of a rectangle. If I know the length and I know the minimum and maximum area, I need to find the possible widths. All right, again, a minimum of whatever we have is a minimum or maximum. That is the formula you're putting in between here. We have a minimum and maximum average. So this is minimum let me fix this. This is minimum average. This is maximum average. And our actual average is in between. How do I find the average of 3 things? How do I find the average of these 3 test scores? Matthew? Yep, so it's going to be my first plus my second plus my third divided by 3. So there's the formula for my actual average. And that's going to be between the minimum and the maximum. So I've written a very general game plan, and now I'm writing a more specific game plan with the formula in there. So now my minimum is 8.8 is less than or equal to 8.7 plus 9.6 plus x divided by 3, which is less than or equal to 9.9. Questions on writing that inequality? Okay, what do I do from here? By the way, you had something like this on a homework quiz. What do I do from here, Jacob? I wouldn't do that yet. What would I do first? Yeah, let's add these first. So 6 plus 7 is 13, carry the 1. That's going to be 17, 18, right? That's 18. Plus x divided by 3 is less than or equal to 9. I'm just going to finish this up. Okay, now Jacob, what am I going to do? Yep, so I'm going to multiply by 3 on all sides so I can get rid of that 3 in my denominator. Alright, so 8.8 times 3 is going to give me 26.4 is less than or equal to 18.3 plus x, which is less than or equal to 29.7. Now what? Serena, now what? Yep. Alright, so this should be a 1. It's 8. So I have to get 8.1 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 11.4. That would be our answer. All right, so that is an inequality story problem. All right, we did an and problem in this one right here. That's an and. Someone asked me for ands and ors. There's an and. All right, an or is going to look something like this. 3v plus 1 is less than negative 3, or 2v plus 1 is greater than 5. That's an or, is when it looks like that. All right, and we're just going to add a negative 1. I'm just going to finish solving this. Jacob. Yes, no, you can leave it as that. Now the question, the harder part is the absolute value stuff. Alright, so if I said to you, you need to tell me which of these we have. So all of you do this at the end. So let's say I have negative 3 times the absolute value of 2x plus 1 is less than or equal to negative 9. There's my first one. And then my second one is going to be, well, let's just do that one. What am I going to do first? What am I going to do first? Colin, what am I going to do first? Yep. Can I decide right now if I have an and or an or? Put the chair down. Can I decide right now if I have an and or an or? Why? So like right here, why can't I decide if I have an and or an or? Yep, Andrew, you're listening. I still have the multiplication by this negative 3. Can I do the distributive property? Why? Excellent, thank you, that was perfect. Yep, those absolute values are in operation. I can't do the distributive property. All right, so Nick, I have to divide both sides by -3. So I end up with the absolute value of 2x plus 1. And then I have a +3. Colin, do I flip the symbol? Why? Excellent. So this symbol flips. I have my absolute value on the left. I have a constant on the right. Questions so far? So this is when I decide if I do an and or an or. So Colin's done some of the hard work here. Now someone tell me, do I have an and or do I have an or? Peter? Why? Is that an and or an or? Is that an and or an or? That's an or. Okay, I need you guys to take a snapshot of this in your brain. Ands are less than or equal to. Ors are greater than or equal to. Take a snapshot of that in your brain. This is an or. So I need to split this separately. One of them is going to be exactly as what you see. 2x plus 1 is greater than 3. Somebody do the other one for me. Ashton? Excellent. Less or equal to -3. And then you guys solve that. All right? Are you guys cool? Because we are done with our time here. All right, if you have more questions, I am here during lunch and I am here during study hall, so come see me if you have more questions.